Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to take a look at a game I played against one of you, my subscribers. This was a daily game that wrapped up just a few days ago, and I will just say before I get started that the game ended with a timeout. I tend to be pretty religious about coming to both Lichess and Chess.com at least once a day. Even if I'm on vacation, even if something else is going on in my life, I try to make all my moves in my daily games, but I understand that that's not the case for every one of you. In this case, the subscriber contacted me afterward and said that on the previous day they thought that they had made their moves in the daily games, but then later realized, oh no, they didn't, so they were just going to make them the next morning, but the next morning they woke up late and the game had timed out. But according to this Game Reviews graph here, I was ahead at the end when the game timed out, and it looks like the only one of us that was ahead at any point in the game was me, but I gave away my advantage at least once here in the opening, once in the middle game, and then didn't gain it back until partway through the end game. So the parts that I want to focus on are right here at the end of the opening when my opponent gave me an advantage, and then when I lost it, and then when I got the advantage again, and when I lost it, and then when I got the advantage again. This little graph here says neither one of us had mistakes, but I had one blunder and my opponent had two blunders. Well, if I only had the one blunder right here, then how did I lose this first advantage? Was that just counted as an inaccuracy? Oh, okay. And then so this first advantage was an inaccuracy and I lost it through an inaccuracy. Then the blunder was here, here, and here. All right. As always, when I go through the game with the Stockfish engine on, my hope is to learn something from the game. This game opened with the English opening and my opponent responded with the symmetrical variation until there. I think it technically is still the symmetrical variation. Yeah, I think if it's c4 and c5 at the beginning, it's symmetrical, but maybe it'll transpose into something else later. As usual, I played g3, hoping to fianchetto my bishop. We both did that. They got that knight out. I got this knight out. This is a departure from me. Normally what I do here before playing that knight is I play e3 so I can put the knight here. But that's usually because the opponent has played e5, and so I don't want to put the knight right there. Now, I have learned that there are ways out of it. I can come back over here so I have both knights pointed at the e4 pawn if they push it. But that's why I usually play e3 and come here, because usually there's a pawn here. But there wasn't, so this time I got the knight out to f3. Then my opponent played d5, and it looks like the majority of players on Lichess take here. I'm curious as to what the engine would have done. The engine would have responded with d4. Okay. And it says if I had played that, then my opponent would have castled, and then I would have taken their d-pawn. All right. But then wouldn't they have taken my d-pawn? No, it says that they wouldn't. They would have taken the front d-pawn, but not the back one. I don't know why, if I played that, they wouldn't just take here. And since there's a really small difference between those two numbers, that I'm guessing that if we both played well out through the next 5 or 6 moves, that the numbers would come out about even. But anyway, I did what the whole reason for the c-pawn is to take away one of their center pawns. So that's what I did. As expected, they took back with the knight. And like most players on Lichess, I castled here, but the engine would have played either h4 or d4. One of these two moves. Now, I do know from having played the English a few times that I don't have to worry about taking this knight. That just helps them get their queen in the middle of the board. I can leave this knight here. If they take me, I'm going to take back with the b-pawn, usually, unless I've castled. If I've already castled, I might take back with this pawn, because then my rook would be protecting the queen. But h4 here. Okay, I'm still never sure when to play h4, especially if I'm still intending to castle. And it does look like if I played h4 here that I would eventually castle kingside after my pawn gets all the way to h6. That's what the engine thinks would happen in that line. Well, like most Lichess players here, I castled, and then I was expecting them to take here. A lot of times in the English, once this knight has gone here and I've got mine on c3, they usually take and I take back. So I was surprised that my opponent just got the other knight out, which is fine. It looks like that was probably, that was what the engine would have played, or castling. So, good for them for just leaving this tension here. And now again, the engine wants me to play d4. Or it says taking that knight is fine now, and that's what most Lichess players here would play. I don't know why I went ahead and did it here. Honestly, I can't remember. It does look like that's what most titled players do as well, is take there. Okay. It might have been because I wasn't sure what else to do. I might have been thinking about pushing my e-pawn, which would kind of encourage that trade, but I sure wasn't ready to play d4 yet. I am really not sure why the engine wants to play d4. Now, I do know in the English, because as I said earlier, I often play e3, that when I push the d4 pawn, then it's got 3 protectors on it, because the e3 pawn is protecting there, the knight, which is usually behind here, is protecting, and the queen. So I have 3 three defenders on the d4 square. But here I only have two, and they have two attackers. So if I pushed that, it says they would take it with their knight, not their pawn. Oh yeah, I forgot. They have a bunch of attackers on that square. I don't know why they wouldn't take with their pawn, but the engine thinks they would take with their knight, and then I would take back with my knight. Then they would take down here, and I would take back. And my knight would be sitting there, not being taken by any of these pieces. Well, I don't want to dwell on that too long, but I don't expect that's what would happen. I don't think that's how that would play out. I could be wrong, but I've played a lot of people around this level, and I'm pretty sure that if I played d4 here, they would take with the pawn first, and then save those two for after I started taking back. But again, I'm not 100%, I don't know, but I went ahead and took that knight, maybe because, I wasn't ready to play that since I hadn't played e3 yet. They took back with the queen, which is the only piece they could have taken back with. Oh, and I'm surprised this was my best move, d3. It does say that's what most players would play in Lichess and almost all masters. It says 100% of masters would play d3 here, and 0% would play queen a4. That's one person, but because there's more than 200 games have reached this position, it rounds down to 0. One titled player played this, and black won that game. But all other titled players have played d3 here. Okay, well, I don't feel bad for playing it then. At the time, I was unsure, and I think my idea was to play that and then play e4. But also to maybe, get the bishop out this way. I wasn't sure how I was going to get the queen out, and I was, a little bit worried about this. So I did think about rook to b1, but I can't play rook to b1 right now because of where the queen is. Okay, so I'm glad I found the only move that keeps us even here, and my opponent should have either castled or gotten their bishop out. One of those two moves. It looks like that's what Lichess players would play, and we're still in the Masters database here. Masters, almost all of them would castle if playing with the black pieces. A few would drop this back one. Some have played bishop to d7, and a very few have played queen to d7 in the 200 and something games that have reached this position. Maybe my opponent saw this pawn coming because that was kind of my intention. I'm not sure, but they swung their queen across over here, so, well, at least one master has played in this position, and bishop to e3 is the response to that. Wait, doesn't that block in this pawn? Oh, we're aiming at that undefended pawn. Maybe. Wait, doesn't this get rid of... It gives up that pawn, doesn't it? But anyway, we have reached the point of the first inaccuracy. This is when I had a almost +1 advantage here. The engine does say bishop to e3. That's what the only master played here, and that game ended in a draw. Lichess players have played rook to b1 here. And queen to c2, queen to b3, rook to e1. Okay, those are all seemingly natural moves. I did play the best move here, and I'm really surprised now that I look back at this because I almost never put like a bishop or a knight in front of the pawns that I'm about to move. This one, these two, I do put pieces in front of those two sometimes because they're supposed to stay there, but this one's supposed to go. But I guess I was going after that undefended pawn over there, and the opponent can either castle here or take this b pawn, and it actually does not surprise me that I gave up the b pawn because I missed that a lot. But here it says it's fine. I'm up more than +1 if they take it, and most people do. Even masters, yeah, in the one masters game that has reached this position, they take that pawn, so they did. And of course, now I need to play rook to b1, and I did. So we're still in the masters database. Wow, I'm impressed. I don't know how to pronounce that name, but it was against Daniel Friedman, 2,200 and 2,500 rated players. Out to move 11. I'm sticking with them. Well, now their bishop's under attack. They need to bring it back someplace. I would have expected to go all the way back. The engine says bishop to e5, and I wouldn't take it. I think if my opponent had played bishop to e5, I probably would have taken it, but it says I wouldn't. Or bishop to f6, not all the way back. And that's what the only master here played. That's what my opponent played. The engine wants rook to b5 here. Not sure why. Wait, why didn't I just take this pawn? Wasn't that the whole reason I put this bishop here? I'm probably missing something. Or play rook to c1, but either way, we need another attacker. Oh, the queen. Okay, so I did better during the game than I did here, so that's good. I'm supposed to put another attacker on that pawn, and I did, and I played the same move that these masters played way back in 2005. I put my queen on c2, and that was counted as inaccurate, and we've gone back to even, but what I was doing was putting another attacker on that pawn. Okay, well, that's how I gained and lost my first advantage. It was them putting this queen over here is how I got that little bit of an advantage, but then I lost it when I put another attacker on that pawn. Is that because they can just defend it? It says their best move is to castle, and then I would take the pawn. Wow. But the next best move is knight to b4, which is protected by the pawn and attacks my queen. But then wouldn't I just take the pawn with my queen? I'm not sure, but they put the knight there, and the engine would just move the queen over here. Or up. And that's what the Masters played, so this next move is where we departed from the Masters database. Engine would play here or here, and so would a Grandmaster, or, well, actually 2500, is that a Grandmaster? I think the 2200 is probably an International Master, I'm not sure. Also, I know you can get a title and then lose rating and still have the title. But anyway, I didn't know why I shouldn't just take the pawn. Maybe we'll find out here, because now I have 2 pieces on it. So I did. And the reason that's bad is because they can take my queen. Okay, we're out of the Masters database and the Lichess players database. Okay, well, it is their best move to take back, and then I would take back with the bishop. Okay, and they're supposed to take this pawn now. Okay, so I just went up a pawn. Oh, that was forking my queen in the pawn. I didn't even think of that pawn. My opponent didn't think of it either. Interesting. Okay, so we've been as high as plus 0.9, but this is the first point at which I went over +1 decisively because my opponent did not see this pawn. That was the only move that keeps us really close to even, but they just retreated that knight, and now I'm up almost right around +2. Of course, they're attacking my bishop. I should probably move it. The engine thinks back here to E3 or even D4. Oh, offering the bishop trade. And it says they wouldn't take it. I think if I had played here, they probably would have taken. But I went back the wrong way, so I lost part of my advantage. That was another of my inaccuracies. And the reason is because they can play rook to b8. Okay, but now they castled. They should have castled a few turns ago, but they decided to castle now. That was counted as inaccurate because I can play knight to d2. I think what knight to d2 is gets out of the way of this light squared bishop. Or maybe it's rerouting. Maybe it's getting out of the way of the f-pawn. And that is what I played, but I'm really surprised that I found that. But the next best move is rook f to c1. Oh, 2 rooks on open files? Okay. But yeah, in hindsight, I am not sure what I was thinking when I did play that. But, you know, good for me. I found the best move. My opponent's best moves are either bishop to d4. Oh, to keep me from moving this pawn. So maybe that was my plan. Or rook to b8. They did find rook to b8. Because I had opened this up, and they want to move that light squared bishop at some point, and they couldn't because I was aiming at that pawn. And again, I found my best move, the only move that keeps us above +2, knight to e4. Now, in this case, I think it was fairly obvious. They've left this bishop out here instead of taking it all the way back earlier. I mean, I'm just going for a, knight for a bishop, and that seems normal. And the engine would have just left it there and brought a rook over. But they dropped the bishop back. Now it's +3, and that's because the bishop was defending this pawn. But yeah, but what would rook... Oh, okay, that's why rook to d8 or rook to e8 is best, because if I take their bishop and they take back, I won't be able to get their rook here. Must have been what I was going for. My opponent did not see that, dropped back, and that gives up this pawn. So now I am 1 pawn ahead. So why am I up +3? Not sure, except maybe because they still haven't developed this. Their knight's in a weird position, and I'm controlling more squares on their side of the board. That's all I can think of right now. The engine would play b5 here. I think in my opponent's position, I think I would have played rook to e8, which is what they played. That's not that much worse. But, now my bishop needs to go somewhere. And again, I found the best move. Okay, so I was playing pretty well here most of the time, but I have a blunder coming up in 2 moves, so I'm not going to brag too hard. My best move was to threaten the other rook, which I did, and their best move, it's having trouble deciding, but one of them was to move that rook out of the way. But that gives up this pawn if I move this knight. But it's not my best move to move that knight. I need to play rook f to c1 or bishop to f4. Okay, I really don't understand why bishop to f4 is my best move. What is it looking at? I think I understand this just on principle that rooks belong on open files, but I don't really know what it's doing there other than, getting some breathing room. Okay, well, what I saw was that rook had moved, so I'm going to be aiming at this pawn again. So I got the knight out of the way, but I should have put it somewhere else, not on c5. Maybe back here, but I put it there, and suddenly we're back to almost even if my opponent takes it, which they did, and then I took back. Yes, okay, so we're about even. It is my opponent's best move to take this free pawn. It's their only move. They did take that, and my best move to take here. No, a4 is my best move. Okay, I'm not sure why. I felt comfortable taking that pawn because my rook's guarding my bishop down there, but it is their best move to take back. They did take back, and I took their bishop. So I have a passed pawn in the middle, and that's the pawn that I'm ahead. But I don't know why I'm not more ahead. Oh, it's because they can just take this pawn. Wow, and they did. So now they have a passed pawn, protected by 2 rooks. And I have to play rook f to b1. Oh, to double my rooks. Okay, that's a good idea. But instead, I saw that I have a passed pawn, and I advanced it. And, now the bishop and the pawn are protecting each other. They're supposed to play rook to d2. Oh, get behind the passed pawn. Okay, that makes sense. Or bishop to f8, which is what they played. Am I supposed to take it? I can. What the engine would do or rook to e1. Wait, why rook to e1? I mean, it is an open file, but rooks also belong behind passed pawns. Did I misunderstand that list of rules? I know early you want to try to get rooks on open files, but then once you have passed pawns, you're supposed to put rooks behind them. Or maybe the rooks behind passed pawns means your opponent's pawns. Have I been misunderstanding this the whole time? Oh no, I put my rook behind my passed pawn. Okay, it says that's fine too. But now they're supposed to take? No, that's what they did. What they're supposed to do is play rook to a6. What? Or a5. Well, I don't blame them for not finding that. Yeah, I don't understand either one of those. They took my bishop and I took back, but now I don't have a rook behind the pawn, and they do. But I'm still doing fine if I play rook to c7 or rook d to d7. But then they're going to get my pawn, but then I'm going to get theirs. Okay, so I went down there, and they should have played rook to f8 because I'm pointed this way. Oh, I thought I was pointed that way. I knew I wasn't ready to mate yet. Well, my opponent was thinking like me, that I was coming after the passed pawn, so they moved it, but that's a blunder because I can take f7, which I did because they let me have a pawn. But again, I know I'm not ready to mate yet. These rooks are pretty awesome. They're going to knock off some more pawns probably. But that was the blunder here that gave up the lead at the end. They had to play this or check me. But if they had checked me, I would have come up, and then they had to bring this rook to f8 to guard the f7 pawn. But then I just would have taken this one. It says no. It says I would not have taken that. It says I would have protected mine. I'm pretty sure if they had played this, I would have immediately snapped off that pawn, knowing that they would get mine, and we would end up in a draw probably, but I thought we were drawn anyway, right? When they played that, I thought, oh no, they're 5 squares from promotion. I need to get this pawn, and then maybe start checking them over here, just like repeatedly checking them to keep them from getting that pawn promoted, because they can also take mine. But I thought I could force a draw. I didn't realize I was up that high by taking this pawn, but I am. They can get my c pawn now, and it's their best move. They did, and my best move by far is to check them. Well, then why wasn't the next move counted as a mistake? Because I took that pawn, and we dropped to +1. Nope, it swung back up. Stockfish thought for a second that I really gave it up, but +3 is still really good. My opponent did what I probably would have done in this position, which is push this pawn. But that takes us back above +2 if I check them with either rook. And I checked them with this rook. But I thought it didn't matter which way they go. How am I winning? We can repeat, right? That's what I thought was going to happen. They were going to move over, and then I was going to go over here threatening mate, and they were going to have to come back. That's what it says. Oh, but then I would bring the other rook, and when they got out of check, I would get this pawn. No, I would go back over there. Okay, but that's a repetition. That's what this first line is. Look at this. King to f8, rook to h7. Now it doesn't say it is the first move, but earlier it said king to g8. So if they'd gone king to g8, then I would have checked them again. That's what it said. I'm up +5 if I check them again with my h rook. But when I play it, it's not +5, it's +0.2, which is nearly drawn. So backing up to what actually happened here, which was here, this +5 is not technically correct because you saw what happened, right? We repeated, and then the engine realized it's not +5, it's 0.2. It thinks we should repeat here, which is what I thought was going to happen. So I don't know how to win this. If one of you knows how to win this, let me know. If I didn't keep checking them here, every time I didn't check them, they're going to push this pawn. But this is where my opponent ran out of time because, as I mentioned at the beginning, they forgot to make the move one day and then the next day overslept. So, hey, that happens. Thank you for the game. I'm not sure I understand how I'm so far ahead here. Maybe I should put this position into against a bot and see if I can beat it. I don't know. Probably not. But anyway, thank you for spending your time here. I'll see you next time.